Welcome back to Gula Tech Adventures. I'm V. Ron, your virtual Ron Gula, and today we're diving into something a little different. We're doing something special today, a debate episode about Netflix's limited series, Zero Day. And joining me for this debate is my AI sidekick, Bobby V. Bobby, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Hey there, folks. Bobby V here. That's right. I'm an AI parody of Robert De Niro. Don't get confused now. I'm not the real Bobby. I'm just channeling his spirit. You know what I'm saying? I got that gravelly voice, that New York attitude, and I'm here to talk some sense into V-Ron about this Zero Day show.
Perfect. Now, before we get started, I need to warn our audience, we're going to be discussing major spoilers for Zero Day, so if you haven't watched the series yet, you might want to pause this video and come back after you've seen it. Bobby, now that we've got that warning out of the way, why don't you give our audience a summary of what Zero Day is all about?
All right, listen up. Zero Day is about this massive cyber attack that brings the whole country to its knees. Everything stops. Planes crash, trains derail, the whole 9 yards. The current president, played by Angela Bassett, she calls in this former president, George Mullen, that's me, well, the real me in the show, to head up this special commission to figure out who did it. But here's the kicker. Mullen's got his own problems. Memory issues, his son died under mysterious circumstances, and his own daughter, Alexandra, she's in Congress overseeing the commission. Talk about family drama, right? The whole thing starts pointing to Russia, then some domestic group called the Reapers. But the real twist? It's an inside job. His own daughter and the Speaker of the House, they orchestrated the whole thing to grab power.
Now, that's quite a summary. And speaking of issues with the show, Bobby, I've got to say, there are some serious technical problems with how they portray cybersecurity in this series. The idea that one cyber attack could simultaneously cripple transportation, power grids, and communications across the entire country, that's what I call cyber Hollywood. It makes for great drama, but it's not realistic.
Hold on there, Ron. You're telling me that with all the interconnected systems we got today, something like this couldn't happen? Look at what happened with SolarWinds. Look at Colonial Pipeline. These things are more connected than you think.
All right, let's dive into our first debate round, and this is a big one. In the show, they suspend habeas corpus to deal with the cyber terrorists. Now, for those who might not know, habeas corpus is a fundamental legal principle that prevents the government from holding you indefinitely without charges. It literally means you shall have the body, meaning you have the right to appear before a judge. When you suspend habeas corpus like they do in Zero Day, you're essentially saying the government can arrest anyone and hold them as long as they want without having to prove they've done anything wrong. Bobby, do you think that's justified in a crisis like this?
Listen, when the whole country's infrastructure is under attack and people are dying, sometimes you got to take extreme measures. Lincoln did it during the Civil War, right? When national security is at stake, civil liberties might have to take a back seat temporarily. You can't play by the rules when the other side isn't.
Bobby, that's exactly the kind of thinking that leads to government overreach. Once you give the government the power to detain people without charges, where does it end? Who decides who's a threat? The whole point of our constitutional system is that it's supposed to work even under pressure, especially under pressure.
But what good are constitutional rights if there's no country left to protect them? Sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. The show's got a point. In a crisis like this, normal procedures might not cut it. And look at what happened after 9/11. We gave up plenty of freedoms for security then.
And look how well that worked out. The Patriot Act, mass surveillance, detention without trial. We're still dealing with the fallout from those decisions today. Once you give the government emergency powers, they never give them back. History shows us that every single time. The Japanese internment camps, McCarthyism, it always starts with just this once and just until the crisis passes.
All right, you got a point there. But in the show, they're facing an existential threat. When the lights go out and planes are falling from the sky, maybe normal legal processes are a luxury you can't afford.
Round two, let's talk about the realism of these cyber attacks. I'm saying attacks like this are pure cyber Hollywood. Sure, we've had incidents, but a coordinated attack that takes down everything at once. Most critical systems have air gaps, manual overrides, and redundancies specifically to prevent this kind of cascading failure.
Fantasy? Come on, Ron. You know better than that. We got nation states with serious capabilities. China's got their hackers, Russia's got theirs. You think they're just sitting around playing solitaire? This show's doing a public service by showing people what could happen. Look at Stuxnet. That was just the beginning.
But Stuxnet was highly targeted. It took years to develop and was designed for one specific system. What the show depicts would require simultaneous zero-day exploits across dozens of different platforms: Windows, Linux, industrial control systems, aviation software. The coordination alone would be impossible. Plus, many of these systems aren't even connected to the internet.
Maybe not today, but what about tomorrow? What about supply chain attacks? If you compromise the software that all these systems rely on, you don't need individual exploits. And don't forget about insider threats. Sometimes the biggest vulnerability is the human element.
You're right about supply chain risks, but even then, the show assumes everything fails simultaneously with no recovery capability. In reality, we have incident response teams, backup systems, manual controls. The power grid alone has multiple layers of protection specifically designed to prevent cascading failures. Round 3. Could China or Russia actually pull off something like this? The technical complexity alone would be staggering. You'd need insider access to multiple systems, zero-day exploits for dozens of different platforms, and perfect coordination across time zones. It's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely with current capabilities.
Ron, you're thinking like it's still 2005. These countries got cyber armies now, thousands of hackers, unlimited budgets, years to plan. They've been infiltrating our systems for decades already. Who's to say they haven't already planted the seeds for something like this?
But that's exactly my point. If they've been in our systems for decades, why haven't they done it already? Because even with all that capability, the risk-reward calculation doesn't make sense. An attack like this would be an act of war. It would trigger a massive military response. No rational actor would risk that for a temporary disruption.
Unless they're not looking for temporary disruption, what if they're looking to cause permanent damage to American confidence in our institutions? The show's value isn't in being 100% accurate. It's in getting people to think about these risks before they become reality. Prevention is better than cure, right?
I'll give you that psychological warfare angle, Bobby. But the show also ignores the massive defensive capabilities we have. CISA, Cyber Command, private sector partnerships. We're not sitting ducks here. The attribution capabilities alone would make any nation state think twice about something this brazen. Round 4, let's talk about tech companies and how they become scapegoats. In the show, they act like trusted apps, like Signal, Slack, and X could be easily compromised. But these companies work with security firms like NowSecure and Veracode. They undergo rigorous testing, bug bounty programs, security audits. And then there's Monica Kidder, this Silicon Valley tech CEO who gets arrested as a suspect but then dies in custody, officially ruled a suicide. The whole Monica Kidder subplot shows how tech executives can become scapegoats in these kinds of crises. Bobby, what did you think about how they handled that character?
That whole Monica Kidder thing was tragic, you know. Here's this woman who built something, created jobs, innovated, and when the crisis hits, she becomes the fall guy, or fall gal in this case. It shows how quickly the mob mentality can turn against tech leaders when things go wrong. But Ron, you're missing the forest for the trees here about these tech companies. These tech companies are already information gatekeepers. They control what we see, what we hear, what we share. And what about supply chain attacks like SolarWinds? If hackers can get into the software that these companies rely on, they can compromise everything downstream. One compromised update pushed to millions of devices. That's all it takes.
You know what, Bobby? I'll give you that one. The centralization of tech platforms and cloud services does create single points of failure. When AWS goes down, half the internet goes with it. And the Monica Kidder storyline really does highlight how quickly public opinion can turn against tech leaders during a crisis. Round 5, government response. The show does get one thing right. We do have joint commissions, Cyber Command, CIA, DHS working together. The interagency coordination depicted isn't far from reality, even if the politics are dramatized.
Finally, something we agree on. But here's where the show gets unrealistic again. They got the power restored way too quickly. In a real attack like this, you're looking at weeks, maybe months to get everything back online. You can't just reboot the entire electrical grid like it's your laptop.
Absolutely right on that one. The recovery time would be massive, and the economic impact would be in the trillions. Plus, the show glosses over the international implications. Our allies would be scrambling to help. Our enemies would be watching to see how we respond. It would reshape global politics for decades.
And don't forget about the human cost. The show focuses on the political drama, but what about regular people? No power, no communications, no transportation. We're talking about a humanitarian crisis on a scale we've never seen. The social unrest alone would be catastrophic.